Welcome to a Hairston story. Across 3 centuries, this family's journey has spanned Scotland, Virginia, and North Carolina through opportunity and oppression, bondage and freedom. Today we honor every ancestor, celebrate every generation, and preserve a legacy that continues through us. This is our story. Welcome home. The Hairston story begins long before America became a nation. In the early 1700s, the family crossed the Atlantic from Scotland, seeking opportunity on Virginia's frontier. Robert Hairston and Ruth Stovall established Marrowbone Plantation, laying the foundation for a family whose descendants would shape the history of Virginia, North Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, and beyond. Today we honor both the triumphs and the complexities of that legacy, remembering that understanding our past helps guide our future. Following the American Revolution, Robert Hairston's son, George Hairston Sr., established Beaver Creek Plantation in 1776. Spanning more than 30,000 acres, it became the center of a thriving tobacco, livestock, and textile enterprise. After the original house burned in 1837, Marshall Hairston rebuilt the elegant manor that still stands today. Now owned by Bank Services of Virginia, the historic home is preserved as a landmark and opens its gardens to the public during Virginia's Historic Garden Week. Behind Beaver Creek's prosperity stood hundreds of enslaved African Americans who cultivated tobacco, tended livestock, produced household goods, and once made an astonishing 660 candles in a single day. Sam Lyon earned enough through woodworking to buy his own tools. After defending himself against an abusive overseer, he fled for 2 months before surrendering rather than leave his family. Today, the trail where he hid bears his name, Sam Lyon Trail. Wagon masters Ned and Clem earned extra income through skilled trades. In 1812, an attempted slave uprising revealed that the desire for freedom could never be enslaved. Robert and Ruth Hairston's son, Peter Hairston, established Sauratown Hill Plantation in present-day Stokes County, North Carolina in 1786. Known throughout the region as Sauratown Peter, he expanded his holdings to include Royal Oak in Virginia and later Coolamy Hill in Davie County and plantations and farms in Forsyth, Davidson, and Davie County, North Carolina. Through strategic land purchases and marriage into the Perkins family, Peter became one of the most influential planters in North Carolina's backcountry, helping extend the Hairston family's legacy across the region. Peter Hairston's story also reflects the painful complexities of slavery. In 1785, he purchased an enslaved woman named Sally Blagg, with whom he had several children. Although denied freedom, Sally became the matriarch of a vast line of descendants. Peter arranged for one of their sons to learn to read and write, and later entrusted him with managing the plantation. Today, thousands of descendants trace their ancestry to Sally Blagg, whose resilience and legacy remain an essential part of the Hairston family story. To tell the story of the enslaved at Sauratown, we turned not to legend or family tradition, but to the historical record. Court cases, probate files, deeds, wills, inventories, and overseers' testimony allowed the voices of the past to speak for themselves. Together, these documents reveal a more complete and unbiased picture of life, labor, and survival on the Sauratown Plantation network. Sally Blagg was more than a name in history. Court testimony from multiple overseers confirms they knew her personally, showing how well documented her life was. Purchased in 1785, she became the mother of several of Peter Hairston's children. One son was taught to read, entrusted to manage the plantation, and sent to establish Coolamy, an extraordinary legacy born from extraordinary resilience. When Sauratown Peter died, his probate records listed 626 enslaved men, women, and children. The list then continues with 88 living descendants of Peter and the enslaved Sally Blagg. More than an inventory, these pages preserve the names of hundreds whose lives and labor built the Hairston plantations. Behind every name was a family, a story, and a legacy that continues today. Peter Hairston's principal plantations were Sauratown, also known in his estate records as Hamburg Place, where the mansion stood, and later Coolamy. He also operated several satellite plantations, including Muddy Creek, Old Town, and Shoebuckle. When Peter died, the inventory of Hamburg Place recorded more than property. It revealed the work of the enslaved community. Hundreds of livestock, plows, wagons, harnesses, and woodworking tools reflect a large, self-sustaining plantation where enslaved men and women farmed, cared for animals, hauled goods, and built the wealth that sustained the Hairston Empire. This inventory is far more than a list of property. It is a record of the labor demanded of the enslaved people at Hamburg, Sauratown Plantation. Every plow, wagon, harness, and tool represents work performed by enslaved hands. The number of plows suggests that dozens of workers cultivated hundreds of acres, planting, hoeing, and harvesting from sunrise to sunset. The plantation's wealth was built not by its equipment, but by the people forced to use it every day. The inventory also reveals a community of highly skilled enslaved workers. More than 100 hogs, 22 cattle, 14 horses, and 400 sheep required year-round care. Enslaved men and women fed livestock, repaired fences, butchered animals, cured meat, and sheared sheep. Wagons, carts, and harnesses point to trusted teamsters who hauled crops and supplies, connecting the plantation to mills and markets throughout the region. This testimony reveals that Hamburg was not an isolated plantation, but the center of a network that included Old Town, Shoebuckle, Ballew's Creek, and Muddy Creek. For the enslaved, it meant being moved wherever labor was needed, often separating families while serving one plantation empire. Their work stretched across thousands of acres under Peter Hairston's control. In this testimony, a Hairston overseer estimated the annual cost of maintaining enslaved children and those unable to perform full field labor at just $15 each. His words reveal the harsh reality of slavery. People were measured not by their humanity, but by their economic value to the plantation and its owners. When asked, how were the Negroes clothed and fed, a Hairston overseer replied, "They were fed on the produce made on the places. Nothing was ever sold, except the tobacco and the surplus of wheat and other things not required for the support of the Negroes." His testimony reveals that the Hairston plantations were largely self-sustaining. The enslaved grew much of the food they themselves consumed, while tobacco and surplus crops generated wealth for the plantation owners. Their labor sustained both the plantation and the people forced to work it. A Hairston overseer testified that the plantations at one time included 11 elderly men and women unable to work, 90 children too young for field labor, and about 375 enslaved people who carried the daily workload. These numbers remind us that slavery was not just an economy, it was a community of families where children, parents, and elders all lived under bondage. In 1845, Sauratown Plantation Network produced 85,000 pounds of tobacco. Every leaf was planted, tended, harvested, cured, and packed by enslaved hands. This enormous harvest required the labor of hundreds of people, working nearly year-round. The tobacco created immense wealth for the Hairstons, while those who produced it remained enslaved. This did not include the colonial network. The Sauratown network stretched across Hamburg, Old Town, Shoebuckle, Ballew's Creek, and Muddy Creek. Enslaved people were moved wherever labor was needed, planting tobacco, tending livestock, repairing buildings, and hauling crops. Their lives were shaped not by one plantation, but by an entire plantation empire. Tobacco was the economic engine of Sauratown. Enslaved workers planted, harvested, cured, and packed the leaves into hogsheads marked with the overseer's initials. The heavy barrels were then rolled from the plantation to the river, loaded onto boats, and shipped to Richmond for sale. Every barrel represented wealth, created by enslaved hands. Overseers testified that the enslaved were fed from food they grew themselves. Once each year they received clothing made on the plantation and a blanket valued at just $1.20. These provisions were meant only to keep them working. Even their food, clothing, and shelter were measured as costs in the plantation's ledger. A typical day for an enslaved person on the Sauratown Plantation Network began before sunrise and ended after dark. They might labor in tobacco fields, care for hundreds of livestock, build fences or barns, or be sent to another Hairston plantation. Their food came from crops they raised, their clothing was made on the plantation, and each year they received a single blanket. Tobacco was the plantation's greatest source of wealth, producing as much as 85,000 pounds in a single year. But the enslaved raised far more than tobacco. They grew corn, wheat, vegetables, and fruit, tended bees, cattle, pigs, sheep, and poultry, and supplemented their diets by hunting and fishing. Their labor made the plantation both profitable and largely self-sustaining. This 1855 court record offers an important clue in the Sally Blagg line. Smith Hairston is listed among Sally's descendants, placed between Tip and Salem, two known children of Sally Blagg. His placement suggests that Tip may have been Smith's father, helping us move one step closer to knowing his parents. Another clue comes from North Carolina's cohabitation records. On May 26, 1866, Smith Hairston and Vina registered their marriage on the very same day that Tip Finley Hairston and Edie Hairston did. For newly freed families, registering cohabitation was a significant legal act, and close relatives often appeared together. While not conclusive proof, these records strengthen the possibility that Smith was Tip's son. With the fall of the Confederate government in Danville and Greensboro, Salem became the nearest center of Union authority for the Sauratown plantations. The May 21, 1865, announcement at St. Philip's Church marked the official arrival of freedom for the enslaved people of Sauratown, ending generations of bondage and beginning an uncertain journey toward liberty. After Sauratown Peter's death, Sauratown Plantation passed to Ruth Hairston, while her brother inherited Coolamy. Ruth later willed Sauratown to her nephews, Peter W. Hairston and Nelson G. Hairston. After their mother died, the brothers divided the estates, with Peter taking Coolamy and Nelson becoming sole owner of Sauratown. Most of Sauratown was later sold to Pine Hall Brick. A small tract went to the plantation's longtime caretaker, and the Hairston Cemetery was deeded to the Hairston clan. The remaining investment company, Sauratown Plantation, Inc., was eventually dissolved, bringing the historic name to an end. The story of Sauratown is more than the story of one family. It is the story of hundreds whose lives, labor, and legacy shaped our history. May we honor their sacrifice by preserving the truth, remembering their names, and sharing their stories. Presented by Spencer McCall Jr. at the Travis Hairston Reunion, Pine Hall Baptist Church, July 4, 2026.